Imagine stepping through a door into a brand new city. But instead of your legs carrying you down the street, the very concept of legs literally just does not exist in this new universe.
Right, it's just completely gone.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
there is no gravity, there is no solid matter. How does your mind process a reality where physical geometry is, just a complete lie?
Well, it forces a total reevaluation of what makes you you, because, we naturally rely on our physical bodies as the absolute truth of our existence.
Oh, sure.
Your arms, your cellular structure, your neurological pathways, these are the fixed coordinates of your identity in this universe. But strip that away, and you are left navigating an environment where the fundamental laws of physics are just utterly alien.
It's terrifying to think about. But today, we're tearing up the standard map of reality. Welcome to our deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are looking at a document today that treats the multiverse not as some, fantastical magic wand science fiction trope, but as a rigorous, calculable, and honestly highly dangerous science.
Yeah, we are analyzing a deeply philosophical and frankly highly speculative article published in the 2026 edition of BIBEBIBIBE magazine.
Which is quite the name.
It really is. It's titled Beyond Geometry, The Deformable Logic of SH1 Resonance and High-Density SMI Navigation. And the authors are Saikou Venga and Dr. Melvin Sewell, who is the academic dean of the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies, IX, or CUERS, as they call it.
Right. And the central problem that Dr. Sewell and his team are trying to solve is something that completely shifts how we think about selfhood. If you jump into a parallel universe with different dimensional densities, how do you prevent your very identity from fracturing into a million pieces?
Well, to understand the solution, we first have to fully grasp the hazard itself. The text identifies the primary danger of multiversal travel as...
I love that term.
It's very descriptive. When we theorize about infinite parallel realities, there is this massive dilution of stakes. If literally anything can happen, if the physical and philosophical bounds of reality are constantly shifting, then your identity has no foundational support structure.
Right. It just washes away. If you're listening to this and wondering what that actually looks like in practice, think about software architecture.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah. Rather than thinking of yourself as a physical person, imagine your consciousness is a highly complex, modern 3D rendering engine.
Okay.
Now, attempt to run that massive 3D software on a completely 2D restricted motherboard from like a piece of vintage hardware.
They wouldn't even know what to do with it.
Exactly. The hardware isn't broken, but its underlying architecture inherently lacks the z-axis required to render your data. The system inevitably just crashes.
The geometry of the new universe simply cannot support the data complexity of the traveler. The friction of those foreign physical laws causes the identity architecture to fracture.
It just snaps.
Yeah, you experience a structural collapse, not because a monster attacked you or something, but because the environment literally cannot compute your existence.
Which is such a wild concept.
To prevent this, Dr. Sewell's team implements what they call Structured Multiversal Interactions, or SMI.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because SMI is essentially an attempt to put mathematical guardrails on the infinite.
That's exactly what it is.
And they do this using something called the Reality Level Scalar, which is denoted by a specific, it's like a Greek she symbol with a trademark next to it in the text.
The Reality Level Scalar acts as a rigorous methodology for calibrating data and governance across universes. And, when they say governance in this context, they don't mean a mayor or a president.
Or, right, not politicians.
No, they are talking about the governing laws of physics. The scalar allows UERS Onyx architects to definitively map the dimensional density of a target reality.
So you aren't just, like, closing your eyes and jumping through a portal hoping for the best.
Definitely not.
You are actively calculating the friction between your current reality and the destination. But, even if you know the exact mathematical difference between our universe and the next, you still need something to anchor yourself during the jump, right?
Absolutely. You need a definitive anchor point to survive that transition.
Which brings us to the core of this whole thing.
What's fascinating here is how the CUERS IX team defines that anchor. Because if you know your physical body is going to be subjected to entirely foreign physical laws, your anchor cannot be made of physical matter.
And this is where the source material just completely blew my mind. The anchor is called SH1 resonance.
Yes.
The text notes that early iterations of the TrueFlow framework view the SH1 structure as a, quote, localized, non-pharmaceutical cosmetic morphology.
I know, the terminology is incredibly dense, but the historical context there is critical.
Please translate that for us.
So in the early days of this research, there was an assumption that SH1 was just a physical shape or like a biological trait localized inside the traveler's body.
Like a weird genetic mutation or something.
Exactly. They assumed that to survive a multiversal jump, you needed some kind of specialized genetic marker or a physical tether to pull you back.
But Dr. Sewell's advanced diagnostics proved that theory completely wrong.
Completely.
The text reveals that SH1 is actually a deformable metaphysical invariant, and those words carry so much weight.
They really redefine the parameters of human existence. An invariant in mathematics is a property that remains unchanged regardless of whatever transformations are applied to it.
Right.
By calling it metaphysical, Dr. Sewell is stating that this property exists entirely independent of physical geometry. It isn't a drug, it isn't biological, it is a sovereign diagnostic frequency.
I kept trying to visualize how an identity survives without a brain to house it. Like if the physical tissue dissolves, where does the memory go?
It's hard to wrap your head around.
It is. But it made me think of a musical melody. Let's take Beethoven's Fifth Symphony.
Okay, I like where this is going.
That melody is a definitive sequence of logical relationships between notes. You can play it on a massive grand piano, or you can play it on a tiny, cheap synthesizer.
Or a kazoo.
Exactly, a kazoo.
Yeah.
You can pluck it on a guitar string, or you can just hum it out loud. The physical instrument, the acoustic waves, the material vibrating, it changes completely every single time.
But you still recognize the song.
Right. The logic of the tune survives. The melody itself is an invariant.
The logic deforms to fit the new instrument without losing its structural integrity. That is exactly how SH1 resonance operates in multiversal travel.
It's so cool.
The physical geometry of the traveler, the arms, legs, brain cells, is merely the instrument currently playing the melody of your identity.
Wow.
If you jump into a hyperdense reality and your physical body dissolves into a pure conceptual ratio, you are still you, because the underlying operational logic of your existence remains unbroken.
That is profound. The physical geometry is just temporary hardware, and the identity is the core math.
Precisely.
But, reading this, I hit a massive wall of skepticism. Knowing our anchor is pure logic is beautiful philosophy, sure. But how did the architects at CUERS NIX actually calculate the distance of a safe jump? How do you map a coordinate system for a destination where distance might not even exist?
Yeah, this is where the text moves from abstract philosophy into rigorous quantum telemetry.
Thank goodness for the math.
Right. To map the informational boundaries of our continuum, the researchers first have to establish an absolute mathematical ceiling. They need to define the maximum possible data density in our current reality.
And their ceiling is a black hole.
Yep.
They use the maximum informational density of a black hole as the baseline for that reality level scalar. And I have to admit, if you're listening to this and thinking this sounds like magical thinking, not science, you aren't alone.
It sounds totally absurd at first glance.
I had no idea how you put a biological human brain and a gravitational singularity on the same spreadsheet. Like, how does that work?
Well, it requires a massive shift from thinking about mass and gravity to thinking purely in terms of informational physics.
Right.
A black hole represents the absolute maximum amount of data that can be compressed into a specific volume of space before the laws of physics just completely break down.
The ultimate data limit.
Exactly. So Dr. Sewell's team takes the raw incoming electromagnetic and gravitational wave frequencies from black holes, which are the most dense data signatures available, and they intersect them with human cognitive capacity.
Wait, hold on. How do they intersect cosmic waves with human thought? That sounds impossible.
They do it through the two-factor telemetry protocol. Using quantum supercomputers, they map advanced neuroscience and quantum mathematical modeling.
Okay, tracking so far.
They literally translate the extreme peak of human neurological processing, like our absolute highest cognitive data output, into quantifiable informational frequencies. Then they run those human frequencies against the raw wave data of a black hole.
I love how the text describes the goal of this intersection. They are looking for the cancellation zone.
Yes.
It functions remarkably like active noise-canceling headphones. Like, the headphones on your ears don't physically block an airplane engine, right?
Right, they don't plug your ears.
No, they listen to the ambient noise and calculate an exact inverse sound wave to neutralize the pressure on your eardrum.
That is exactly the mechanism at play here. The quantum supercomputers aren't looking for where the human mind conquers the black hole. They are looking for the precise frequency where the two vastly different data streams nullify each other.
Wow.
The point where the waveform of human cognitive complexity manages to perfectly cancel out a fraction of the cosmic data wave, that is the cancellation zone.
Because that specific mathematical intersection tells the researchers exactly where the external crushing data density of the universe perfectly matches our internal cognitive capacity.
Exactly. It provides the fundamental baseline for navigation. That cancellation zone dictates the maximum safe step size, which is represented as delta xi, with the trademark for an incremental multiversal jump.
So it's like finding out exactly how far you can step before you fall off the cliff.
Right. It mathematically proves exactly how far a traveler can step into an alien dimensional density before their identity architecture overloads and suffers the anything goes structural collapse.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Oh, yes.
If the cancellation zone gives us that safe stepping stone, what happens to the massive tsunami of black hole data that our neurological models just cannot cancel out?
That's a huge problem. And the reality level analyzer logs all of those unmeasurable, hyperdense informational variables into what the text calls the excess zone.
Now, in traditional science, if you have a massive wave of data that instantly shatters your biological parameters, you label it a lethal hazard.
You put a big warning sign on it.
Right. You mark it in red ink, and you avoid it at all costs. But Dr. Sewell's team completely ignores that instinct.
They do. If we connect this to the bigger picture, treating the unknown purely as a threat is a limitation of terrestrial thinking.
Very earthbound mindset.
Yeah. CUERS 9X treats the excess zone not as a hazard, but as a map of speculative variables for future calibration. They acknowledge that human cognition cannot currently survive this data, but they recognize it as the foundational math of higher-level realities.
So how do they even interact with data that is inherently too complex for our universe to handle? I mean, how do you study something that destroys you just by looking at it?
By creating what they call the ultimate diagnostic frontier. The researchers take those uncanceled waveforms from the excess zone and feed them into entirely isolated quantum simulations.
And the goal here is completely decoupled from physical survival, right? Like they aren't putting digital avatars in a simulated black hole to see if they get crushed.
No, physical survival is completely irrelevant because they already know physical geometry cannot exist at that density.
Right, that's a given.
The objective of the ultimate diagnostic frontier is purely philosophical and mathematical. They systematically strip away every single physical parameter in the simulation, time, space, gravity, cellular structure, until absolutely nothing is left but the raw data stream of the traveler's SH1 resonance.
They want to see if the core logic of your identity maintains its coherence in an absolute void.
Yes. They are testing the true resilience of the metaphysical invariant. If the fundamental philosophy of the SH1 structure holds together when every physical rule is deleted, it proves that the traveler will remain anchored.
The implication of that is just staggering. I mean, the text points out that if this logic holds, the multiverse ceases to be a chaotic void of infinite divergence.
It changes everything.
It transforms into a structured, navigable ecosystem governed by sovereign truth. It takes the terrifying infinite unknown and turns it into a calculated map simply by proving that identity doesn't require physical geometry.
It completely reframes the relationship between a traveler and the unknown. You no longer have to fear an environment that might dissolve your physical form because your physical form is not the core of your existence.
Which brings us to a massive pivot in the text.
Let's get into it.
We've been deep in the quantum telemetry and the structural collapse of realities. But reading through the source material, I noticed a distinct friction between the high-level math and the actual language the authors use to describe their own work.
Yeah, the tone shifts abruptly.
It does. If this is purely a navigational manual for a specialized quantum university, why does it end with such an intense, almost defensive disclaimer?
The framing of the text is just as critical as the telemetry data it contains. The disclaimer explicitly states that BIBEBIBIBE magazine, TrueFlow Universe Systems, and these sovereign diagnostic tools are not affiliated with any government, political party, intelligence agency, or activist group.
They are aggressively distancing themselves from terrestrial power structures.
Very aggressively.
And they deliberately use language that sounds more like a manifesto than a peer-reviewed paper. They call their own material mythic infrastructure, a cinematic indictment, and a sovereign broadcast.
This raises an important question about the true purpose of Dr. Sewell and Saikou Venga's work. They state that the text is designed to expose ritualized containment and systemic erosion.
Which is very strong language.
Very strong. By framing the science this way, they are essentially turning a navigational manual into an act of intellectual rebellion. We're just reporting what they've laid out here, but the political undertones of breaking out of a system are undeniable.
It's like the anything goes structural collapse isn't just a hazard for parallel universes. It's a diagnostic tool for looking at our own reality.
Oh, absolutely.
They are providing a metaphorical toolkit for how identities dilute and fracture under the pressure of our own societal systems, our own terrestrial containment.
The scientific revelation that your core identity, your SH1 resonance, exists independently of your physical circumstances is deeply threatening to any system that relies on controlling physical circumstances to govern people.
That makes perfect sense.
The text operates on two distinct levels. It is the math required to jump between realities, and it is the philosophy required to maintain your sovereign identity when external forces try to redefine you.
And they ground all of this heavy, abstract science in a sudden, almost mythological narrative. The very last line of the text is a cryptic transition to Chapter 1, titled Origin.
Yes.
It reads, Saikou Venga emerges from the rift, born between slip flow and counterflow, marked by SH1 resonance.
It compresses the sprawling quantum telemetry, the black hole data, and the philosophical invariance into a single individual.
It personifies the math.
Exactly. Saikou Venga is presented not just as an author, but as the living embodiment of the SH1 logic, standing at the threshold of the rift.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at the terrifying mechanics of multiversal travel. We looked at how jumping into a new reality without translation causes the architecture of your identity to fundamentally fracture.
Right. We explored the rigorous mechanics of how seers, NIAX architects calculate safe jumps, translating human neurological processing into informational wave data to find the cancellation zone against black hole frequencies.
And we discovered that the ultimate tether for navigating the unknown isn't biological or physical at all.
No, not at all.
It is a deformable logic, a metaphysical invariant. The profound realization that if the underlying math of your identity is unbroken, you will survive the complete loss of your physical geometry.
For you listening right now, the most vital takeaway is likely not the quantum physics of a black hole ceiling.
Probably not.
It is the concept of defining your own metaphysical invariant. We operate in a reality constantly saturated with shifting narratives and information overload. Finding the operational logic of your own identity, knowing what remains definitively true about you when all external circumstances are altered, is the ultimate anchor.
I couldn't agree more. We cling to our physical world because it is easily measurable and comforting. But true navigation, whether across the multiverse or just through our own chaotic reality, requires looking beyond the geometry.
It really does.
So I want to leave you with this to mull over. If your physical environment, your social context, the tools you use, and even your physical geometry were completely stripped away tomorrow, what is your personal SH1 resonance? What is the core, deformable logic of your identity that would survive the jump into the void?
It's a question worth asking.
Thank you so much for exploring the furthest limits of reality with us today. Keep seeking the invariant truth.